Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Let's Get Oral. I'm Jonathan, one half of the LGO team. This podcast originated from our collective passion for promoting oral health knowledge, so we hope you all have enjoyed the episodes we've been able to provide so far. We're really excited to continue sharing an awesome lineup of conversations with some innovative clinicians, researchers, and educators, along with some engaging discussions on the latest oral care topics over the coming months. In the meantime, we're going to switch it up by sharing this casual one-on-one interview with Camille, my lovely co-host. In this interview, we explore how her life journey led to her becoming a certified mouth nerd and what inspired her to launch OSSA, a next-gen oral health and beauty line you should definitely check out after listening to this interview. So, without further ado, here's the first episode in 2024 with Camille Zenobia. Thank you for listening.
Let's get oral. Let's get oral.
Hey, it's Jonathan from Let's Get Oral, your favorite podcast on everything on oral health and how it's connected to our whole body health and happiness. Today, I have a special episode here because I'm sitting here with your favorite co-host, Camille.
Hey.
You want to say hi to the peeps?
Hey, people. It's us again.
In our respective virtual space pods and studios on both sides of the United States. So again, I appreciate you being here this morning.
Let's get oral.
It's always good to see your face.
Yeah, and I'm particularly excited and looking forward to doing this episode because it's clear that we, as producers of the show, probably don't spend enough time actually informing y'all and providing y'all insights on who we are. Not only are we two mouth nerds, there are other things that we get to dabble and spend our times across, but the mouth stuff is definitely the glue and the energy that I think makes this magic happen and keeps us wanting to come back and share and learn more. So for one half, at least for this episode, I look forward to interrogating Camille about her past, present, and future so that you can learn more, not just about her, but also OSSA, a brand origin and story that I think is fascinating. So, Camille.
Yes.
We met at Colgate.
Yes, we did.
But I think the people want to know, who is Camille and what was happening before these two nerds met?
So, like, are you talking about before Colgate? Who was this Camille chick?
Yeah, who is Dr. Camille Zenobia, this mouth nerd coming from the West Coast, now living on the East Coast? And how did you get involved in becoming, how do you become a mouth nerd? Where does that start? Did that start as a kid? Is this something that you stumbled upon into adulthood? Where's the origins for this?
Yeah, that's a journey. I can definitely share with you how it evolved. I guess it all started in Seattle. Of course, that's where I'm from. And I spent most of my life there. But when I was young, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So when I finished high school, I went into beauty school because I couldn't quite commit to a huge college tuition thinking I was going to do ceramics or something. I just didn't feel like that was going to be a productive thing to do. Or, I guess I just didn't want that creative aspect of my life to be my job.
It feels like that's a natural tension for a lot of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I thought I really enjoy talking to people. I like hanging out with people. And so I thought I could do something creative and social by becoming a hairdresser. And I knew that you could make decent money doing that. So I went through beauty school and then I went to London for some advanced training and ended up at a really nice salon in Seattle. And I kind of evolved my career. I was an educator for Aveda while I was working.
Wow.
And I grew into my own salon. And so I had a couple different salons in the Seattle area. But as I evolved my salon business, I started going back to school. And when I went back to school, I, of course, did art classes for fun, but where I started getting really interested was in the sciences, which was a surprise to me. It's not something that I thought I would ever do, even though in third grade, I won the science fair by dissecting a frog.
Hey, hey.
And I really did enjoy that. So that's something.
So I want to pause you right there because I think you just described a natural tension that many of us have experienced throughout like K through 12 schooling of either being told or forced to choose, say, arts or a more creative humanities, liberal art side of work versus, say, focusing on something more STEM oriented.
Right.
And seeing how that plays out in this future that we're just yet to be able to visualize and develop as a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I think I always had a propensity towards math. I think it was just because of the relationship with my father. He just made math seem really engaging. And so I enjoyed it. And I continued to enjoy it despite having terrible professors. I had a few gems, and they were the ones who really took me through. I actually thought about doing my undergrad in math, but I ended up in chemistry. Anyway, when I left my undergrad degree, I went into Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center. I had done some undergraduate work study at that space in a herpes lab, and that got me really interested in doing more of infectious disease. I was really interested in why some people can get the same illness and not get as sick as another person. Like, what toggles that? Why? And so that was kind of what drove me towards the next goalpost, if you will, of actually going for a PhD and letting go of that hairdresser aspect.
So summing up so far, hair entrepreneur.
Yes.
But with some interest in math and chemistry going into that. And that, I mean, to me, that makes sense as from looking at it as an alchemy, like the artistry and biochemistry that comes with working with hair, right?
Yeah, okay.
And the math that comes with doing it as an entrepreneur. So that sticks.
I actually, so my clients as a hairdresser, my clients were really inspirational to me. I would have these really deep discussions, had a lot of Microsoft clients who were super nerds and would talk to me about all matter of things. And I would bounce
the resistor. Did you see the resistor we played with today in solder?
No, some of the people that were programming Excel, and as you're going through college, like Excel takes over your life. And I really, really nerded out over Excel. I'm embarrassed to tell you that I programmed a lot in Excel. And created whole mouse colonies in Excel. It took literally 20 minutes to open my macros. It was terrible. I was so inefficient.
Wow.
But anyway, I do think it is a creative space to be in science. And I always get to use my creative brain because when you're in biology, there are just so many kind of squishy areas where you toggle one thing and it affects 5 other things. And it's not this box that you have to think outside of the box to be able to kind of understand and appreciate all of the levers of what makes us unique and healthy. So I love being able to get creative in the sciences. And I think that that's essential and fun.
Yeah, I agree.
So one of my clients got me the position that got me into the herpes lab. And we studied KSHV, which is Kaposi sarcoma.
That's cool.
And that's what I did my work study project in my undergrad. And when I came out, I landed a job at a fungal lab and really got my hands dirty in fungal research. and
Mm-hmm.
mostly Aspergillus, but I did touch a lot of other strains and species, Candida and others. But it was a really fun time because I had a lot of touch points. I could be involved in a lot of different projects. I got to work on Cryptococcus gattii, which took
Wow.
me into the wild. Like I got to sample the environment because we were looking for this pathogenic strain, and I just felt like some cool forensic scientist trying to like swab a pathogen
Mm-hmm.
from nature. Anyway, so that was super fun.
You sound like you're from Seattle. You're like I'm a mushroom forager too. Multi-faceted. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was such a fun project. Anyway, so after being there for, I don't know, a year and a half, my PI got a job at another university. And so I helped her pack up the lab, but I didn't intend on moving. So I landed another job also at Fred Hutch with the Strong Lab. And I got to do HIV vaccine research, which was a total departure. And the reason I chose that lab, I specifically went over to his office and I harassed him personally because I really liked a review that he wrote. I think it was called "This Little Pigger Goes to the Mucosa." I know. I could tell I could relate to this guy. But not only that, he was doing some really fun research and it was all biochem. And I'm going to be honest, biochem was a weak spot for me. And I just really wanted to strengthen that piece, knowing that it was so crucial to understanding most of biology and signaling cascades. And anyway, so I put myself in there and did HIV vaccine research while I prepped my applications for graduate school.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that explains the immunology foundation.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah. But the mouth, Camille.
I know.
Where
How did
does
I
the
get there?
mouth come into-
I know. How did I get there? Well, I was accepted into the University of Washington microbiology department for graduate school. And because I wanted to be at that host pathogen relationship, I was definitely interested in the microbiome. So during your first year of graduate school, you're rotating through usually 3, maybe 4 different labs. And I was really more interested in the immunology with the microbiome aspect, wherever I could be, where you have that interaction. And so I went through a microbiology lab where I got to work on salmonella. And then my next lab, it was more immunology. And so again, it was in the viral space. But I ended up landing in a microbiology professor. He was adjunct to microbiology, but he ended up being the chair of periodontal department at the University of Washington, and that was Richard Darveau. And I was in this like garbagey little tiny lab in nowhere land and feeling really cool because the science we were working on felt so frontier. And it's primarily because the immunological landscape of the mucosal tissues is just in its infancy, really. And in the mouth, it is like largely untold. And I just thought how cool to be at this very beginning space. And I didn't really fully appreciate the level of science that we were doing. I just thought I was having fun and nerding out every day with my boss. And so I think I was 3 years in, and he sent me to a conference. And I go to the conference and I have a poster, I'm presenting, and I'm all excited to nerd out with other people in this space. And I had been collaborating with, other people in the space. And so I had already been talking to these other PIs at other universities that my boss was working with. And we were all very close. And I thought nothing of it. I just thought, typical. And I go to this conference, and all of the people that I had been working with were like top of the field. And I had no idea that we were so niche and so top of the field. I thought I was just like, I don't know, putzing around in an old lab, having fun. I didn't know that I was like at this premier lab doing really cool frontier science. I just was being a nerd. And so
Yeah.
I was talking to all the people I was working with, and some of the other attendees that were kind of at my level or just above me were basically kind of teasing me about being a brown noser, like going around talking to all the high level people. And I was like, well, I didn't even know. I was working with him. And so I just really I was actually shocked and came home with a lot more appreciation for what I was doing. A lot more respect for my boss. Not that I didn't have any, I just had no idea. I was a little
I
bit
didn't know you were
blindsided.
somebody.
Yeah, you're somebody, not just nobody in a dark, dank lab in Seattle. So I don't know why I had that image, but that's the truth of it. And so I got to do some really incredible science. And when I finished up my PhD, I got to work with George Haji Shingalis at University of Pennsylvania and did some more incredible research. I just felt so lucky. And at the same time, it's really hard to get funding in the university setting.
Yes, it is.
And it doesn't pay a lot. So as I was starting my family, I was starting to, I don't know, be compelled by industry. And Colgate was just a state away. And I saw a position open up that was really in line with my interests. And that was coming in with immunological eyes, creating new stories for their technology. And I really did enjoy that. I got to see a whole other side of the science that I had not a full appreciation for. So in academia, you go about your science like what you find compelling, what your research is unfolding, and kind of just following this golden pathway of curiosity. Whereas, of course, at a company where there's company goals, you kind of have to follow your curiosity, but also make it meaningful to a business marketing degree. And that was a whole other way to use my brain. And I learned a ton. I got to work with their lawyers and their clinical team. I actually transferred from bench science to clinical at some point, and I got to really try on a lot of different hats there. It was really fun. But at the end of the day, they are really very much a manufacturing company and didn't really have the funding to do all of the pharmacological research that we all wanted to do there and that they wanted to do, but their priorities are just a little different. And so I did pivot into pharma afterwards just because I was kind of missing that opportunity to go full nerd and really bring new technology forward. So that's how the career path went. But as I left Colgate, I definitely was still an oral health nerd. So I had to kind of take some of my learnings and evolve them into what we're now calling OSSA.
OSSA. That's I love it. That's fantastic. That's an amazing story though. Like from just again me, like I'm grateful that like I'm informed in some of this, but like every time we revisit I do gather some new nuggets. And so those are anecdotes from like the conference, right? And your perspective and experience of being like, oh, like I work with some rock stars. It's because you're a rock star too, Camille.
Well, I am now, but I blame all of them for it.
Yeah. Right. But I like the threads of how one becomes a mouth nerd with your life experience. Like it makes sense to me. Like it resonates with me because it doesn't happen overnight. At least not for most of us. I think just with the motivations from like intellectual curiosity and a research side versus like life events, starting a family, and just seeing how those things again do its form of alchemy to next thing you know, us meeting at Colgate and then going into pharma to be able to still like work on innovation and delivering meaningful products and therapies to market, right? In a new way, but yet like that was just laying more groundwork for OSA.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's like naturally people are like, what is this OSA thing? So what is OSA?
Well, OSA, I came about quite by accident. When I was developing assays at Colgate, I knew the pathways of interest that we needed to address. So there are very, very specific pathways that create chronic inflammation in our mouths. And so there was a drug I was using. It's not FDA approved for anything, but it has gone through several different clinicals and just not done well. But I was using it as a control because in the laboratory, we knew exactly how it worked and it was really effective. And so basically, what happens in the oral cavity is you have neutrophils coming into your mouth, like a lot, like 60,000 neutrophils per minute when you're healthy.
Wow.
But when you have disease, you have so many more. And when they come in, they're activated. And when the neutrophil is chronically activated, it's supposed to, in a healthy situation, get there, do its job, and then die. And that cell death program is the first step in the wound healing cascade. So if you have chronically activated neutrophils, they're not dying. They're chronically like blowing stuff up and degrading your tissues and creating a different environment for the microbiome. And so there's a lot of dysbiosis is what we call it when the microbiome is shifting because of that backdrop of inflammation. And some of George Haji Shingallis's work has shown that if you solve the inflammation, specifically this MFGE8, I won't go into it, but he has a nice paper showing that if you solve the inflammatory pathway, your microbiome will come back to homeostasis. And so that was my goal, was to create a little assay that we could screen active compounds to see if we could take chronically activated neutrophils and bring them back to a quiet cell death that would initiate wound healing. And it just so happened that one of my friends looked at the drug I was using and said, hey, that looks like niacinamide. And I was like, huh. So I kind of put that in my hat and started doing some research on it. And niacinamide, as we all know, is in like every skincare product known to man. And we know it's anti-inflammatory, but there's not a lot of work done on the neutrophil. And that was really what I was targeting. And so when I started to look at niacinamide with regard to the neutrophil, there were actually some studies. There were some in vitro assays, but more importantly, there was a mouse study that was done. And this is in lung inflammation.
Okay.
So they basically treated a lung infection in a mouse. So in that lung, you have activated neutrophils as well as macrophages. And they were showing that if you use niacinamide, it was effective in creating that wound healing cascade. And it gave me kind of the first level of evidence to move forward with looking at this in periodontal disease. And so Dr. Glogauer did some preliminary study for me where he took patients that he had with periodontal disease, had them spit, isolated their chronically activated neutrophils, and just titrated out the niacinamide. And he found that indeed they were able to downregulate some of those receptors on the neutrophil that were chronically activated receptors that we know. So it's basically when the neutrophil goes chronically activated, all of these receptors come up positive. And if you can turn them off, then they'll go into that cell death program. So that gave us another level of evidence. And I think the hardest part of working with this compound is that, well, besides the fact that dentists don't understand the technology, but the other part is that it is extraordinarily bitter. And so it makes for a difficult formulation. And so I had to partner with somebody who could formulate with it as well as address the flavor issue. And so I partnered with somebody who has that formulation background, and she's also an oral care flavorist specifically. So that's how OSSA came to be, and the name is a whole other story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us.
So the nerd that I am, I wanted just the business entity to kind of drive the idea of solving the oral inflammation, but also kind of imbue good health in totality, because we know our oral health really is connected deeply to all other measures of health. It leads to gut dysbiosis. It can affect our heart health. It can inspire rheumatoid arthritis, and it's linked to Alzheimer's. So like there are all these aspects of health that are connected to our oral cavity. And I wanted to somehow put all that together in a business name. And so os is mouth, but also bone and also face. It's Latin. Salutem is health. So os salutem is our business, and I just abbreviated it to OSSA for the brand.
That you are such a
I
nerd.
know. Sorry, not sorry.
As someone who did 3 years of Latin in high school, because that was a brilliant idea. Learning that language. I appreciate the name. So
it's the backdrop of every language. Well,
legit.
okay, most languages.
Many, that's for sure. That's fascinating. And again, like from the first half, learning your trajectory and experience leading up to Colgate, the learnings from the assay onward, both not only a namesake, but the problem statement of your business, right? Addressing inflammation in a arena or an area that, while we have more understanding of it now than we had, for previous decades, the focus for preventative care or active care tend to not be focused on that aspect or managing it.
Right.
And also like the role education
Yeah.
plays on that too, because there's so much focus on teeth.
Yes.
Not to say teeth aren't important. Obviously they are, but they also take away attention at times from all the other things that goes on in this space.
Well,
so I
think that when our mouth is in homeostasis, it's all working synergistically. So while I don't want to ever demonize fluoride, it is only partially useful, and I suspect only truly meaningful for kids developing who are just more prone to caries. There is a really nice study in a veteran population, and I want to say it's like a couple thousand patients strong, but they basically evaluated varnish versus at-home fluoride care and showed that the fluoride varnish in the chair was just as effective as a home care kit of fluoride. So if somebody is overly concerned about getting their fluoride, I think that they should go get a varnish. But the things that you put in your mouth daily, I don't think should be that complicated. I think we need to simplify, because I think that we could potentiate inflammation unknowingly just by having irritants in our formulas. And so kind of the additional factor in the OSSA branding was to have a really natural experience, but with something that was fully efficacious that could really address the inflammation, because that's what looks like causes the most dysbiosis in the mouth. And I also don't think we have any truly novel opportunities in oral hygiene products. We have fluoride, nanohydroxyapatite, theobromine, and is there anything else?
And that's...
I haven't really seen anything else meaningful. So I think we need to, as researchers, get creative and really start to explore meaningful solutions. I think the prohibiting factors really have been in the clinical trials that we run, because the historical way to evaluate like gingival health is very subjective. And so the investigators for those trials all have to be reading the same, and the variability is quite large. So
Large. Yeah.
right. So you have to stack the clinical trial with a lot of patients, which is cost prohibitive for like a $4 toothpaste or something, right? That doesn't make it really attractive for just any company to move that forward. So I think as we improve our tools for assessing oral inflammation, we can kind of reduce those numbers when we have more objective endpoints that we can evaluate. So there's a lot to unearth there, but
Yeah.
that's my hope for the future is that we'll have better assessments so that we can run those clinical trials to get the data out.
Yeah. And who would you describe OSAs for? Like, who do you envision as a user in the case for such a product? Because I understand not only just like the science and function, but the benefit for being able to manage that harmony between the microbiome and our oral health and immunology. But like to a consumer, it's like, is that gingivitis? Is that
I don't even like to say gingivitis to the consumer because they have historically not cared or really understood what gingivitis is. So like if I were to ask you, have you ever flossed and had some bleeding gum activity? Pretty much everybody's like, oh, yeah,
all of
sure.
us? Yeah,
That's... And I'm like, oh, do you think you have gingivitis? Oh, no. Actually, that's the definition for gingivitis is bleeding gums if you touch them. So the fact that people don't know that is a big thing. But the fact that people don't understand the relationship between oral inflammation and the fact that it could degrade your bone, I think is a more interesting and obvious jump to bring people through. If you have inflammation in your mouth, you're going to probably age faster, which has been shown.
Yeah.
You're going to age faster because the bone in your face is going to degrade faster. Because if you look at the data, you know, as an oral health obsessed person, that if you look at an aging population, the amount of periodontal disease goes skyrocketing, like upwards of 70% by the time you're in your 60s. And that means you're having significant jaw bone loss. Here's all these people getting injectables, facelifts, fat grafts, like all sorts of interventions to reduce aging, but they don't have any tools to address the inside of their face.
So true.
So when I talk to people who are actually concerned about the aging process, if I say anything about niacinamide in the mouth, they understand the leap that I've taken. So I've gone towards the beauty space, not to mention that the formula as it stands is a little pricier. So I kind of have to position as a luxury product. But I think it makes sense for the type of active that I'm using, if I can call it that without having a new drug application. But I think that the kind of beauty lovers out there really understand the proposition, and they are the ones who are most vocal about like how to care for yourself and how to address aging most effectively. And so I want those people to be the ones to kind of carry the flag for OSSA, because it's not obvious to the dentists and they're still very nervous about letting go of fluoride, even though they still have the fluoride varnish. And I would still recommend that for anybody who's struggling with cavities. And it would be just as effective as using a fluoride paste every day. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for education all the way around, from the consumer all the way to the dentist. I think the hygienists are really already on board here, but it's, you know, it's the dentists at the end of the day that the patients tend to listen to.
Yeah.
And so I've had, even in my own consumer test trial, some of the consumers were like, yeah, my dentist saw some improvements, but still wanted me to use a fluoride paste. So.
Yeah, that's a challenge in and of itself, because
Yes.
it's been the way.
Yes, exactly. Even my own dentist, who
now.
really believes in it and has invested too, he's still reticent to, fully subscribe to a fluoride-free lifestyle. But he appreciates the technology because he does want something to believe in and that is science-oriented, that he feels comfortable to recommend to his patients that are refusing fluoride. So again, I think there's a lot of work to do in this field, but I'm here for it.
Me too. I think there's just an abundance of questions, obviously, as researchers and clinicians that we are particularly interested in, that explores, again, the intersection of either the microbiome and oral health, and then how that further extends either to cardiovascular health, sleep quality, nutritional intake and balance. There's
Yes.
all time, like there's just so many threads, right? And I'm glad to know that there's something like OSA and you really trying to be in the forefront again. It seems to be like a reoccurring theme for you.
I only sit in the frontier section.
Yeah, I'm only in the frontier.
Let me just say, it doesn't pay well. It's a hard road.
the struggle in due time, though. And so on that note, like beyond the efforts for fundraising and everything else you're doing to, make your dream and vision come true, because it is something that exists. It is out there in the world. And so while we can speak hypotheticals, I do believe in speaking things into existence. So my next question is, what does the future of OSSA hold for us?
Well, besides a whole lot of education and CME offerings to get the word out there, we have big plans. Of course, we are working on a mint SKU, or like a mint option, because as much as I don't want it in my mouth, most people do. So we are working on that element and getting that into more accessible areas. So currently we're just on social media and with a direct-to-consumer website. But I would like to go kind of boutique-y with Detox Beauty or something like that to get it more accessible to the people who are interested in this space. But as I grow it, I see it being kind of a brand that captures the mucosal health from one end to the other, really capturing the most frontier science in the microbiome health space. So typically when we think of skincare, oral care, digestive care, all of that has been mostly probiotic. And I feel uncomfortable with that. And I've mentioned in previous episodes why I feel uncomfortable with that. But it's really about toggling the environment. And if we think about toggling the environment, we can think of ways to feed the right bacteria and starve the wrong bacteria. And so technologies that are harnessing that communication, that level of communication between the host and the family of bacteria and fungi that we host. So that's kind of what I see OSSA evolving into, is nurturing that microbiome health inside and out in novel ways.
Yes, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, for those who don't know, as we said earlier, OSSA exists. I'm definitely going to have a link to the website so you can see the product page. I'll have links to the social handles, ID and whatnot too, because this is a pod. So there's a good chance you actually cannot see anything that we're talking about in real time. So you're going to take my word for it unless you go to the links to the brand. I think it looks great. I love the palette. And also have enjoyed using the toothpaste, the Citrus Blossom. I don't mind mint. I tend to prefer mint. But after playing around with this, I appreciate having the kind of like uplifting, stimulating feel during and after brushing, and just like the lingering citrus feel and flavor. in the morning. And again, I did not think that would blend well as someone who drinks coffee.
I think it's a more appealing balance there. Whereas, like,
yeah,
I tend to just drink coffee and then be upset that I have a mint background.
yeah. The citrus blossom, like, it's a fantastic flavor. And not only do you have a toothpaste, you also have a mouth serum.
Yes.
And so being able to have another application for being able to promote not just like healthy gums and teeth, and again, the mouthfeel that provides after the rinse, whether you use it before or after brushing. It's nice having this complement.
I would say, so I know you don't know this, but we know this on the back end that not a lot of people purchase the serum, and I think it's our best product, honestly. But people here in the United States aren't huge mouthwash users, and I commend them because I don't want you to use mouthwash.
Right.
But the mouth serum is a whole different application, and it really is about nurturing. So I didn't mention the serum, which is probably a disservice, but it has the niacinamide, but it also has hyaluronin. And hyaluronin has been shown to moisturize the mouth. It is very helpful for people with dry mouth. It's helpful for people who suffer from mouth ulcers. It's helpful if you have dental work and you have sore gums. It will help you heal faster. Actually, my dentist can't live without the serum because he suffers from mouth ulcers. I haven't been able to tell him that I think it's his fluoride toothpaste that's doing it to him. But he's getting the serum, so like it's helping, right?
Yeah.
But basically, like the hyaluronin with the niacinamide is really like a twofold punch in the right direction to balance and soothe. And so it's not a mouthwash, it's a mouth serum to really nurture your mouth tissues. It's something that we haven't done ever in our beauty space. And I'm hoping that it helps people reconsider what they are doing to their mouth. They're typically using a detergent with a bright mint to scour out their mouths like it's a toilet. And it's not. It's our mouth. We should be eating good foods. We should be nurturing with good products. We should be treating it like we do our skin. And so I just really challenge people to reconsider what you're doing to your mouth. It's what you're kissing people with. Take care of it.
Yeah. Kissing my dog. No. No,
it is safe for dogs, but I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't have any xylitol.
No, I think the applications definitely addresses an unmet need in the oral care space, because obviously in one of our earlier episodes, the NO to mouthwash, we dive in a bit more into the history and the science behind mouthwash use and applications and its effects for different populations. But I think with the mouth serum, I think it addresses a lot of the concerns we highlight, in addition to providing new ways to be able to address, say, like for my night routine, like doing, brushing, but then also applying the mouthwash, knowing it's winter, I got the heater on, and my humidifier sometimes can't keep up, and I don't want my mouth to be like the Sahara Desert dryness when I wake up. So having something to help mitigate that, I think it's just fantastic to be able to help prolong my oral health over time. So I hear you when you say, like, while the serum might not sell as well, it is like the hidden MVP in its own ways, and something, again, complementing your toothpaste, which again, like, I wholeheartedly love too. So, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to see some of the new products, like, with mint coming up in the pipeline, and the new flavors, also just new SKUs, and also, like, for me, which I think is hugely important, is the continued education and outreach in this space.
That's really the only reason I want funding, other than production, but also just so I can get myself out in the education space more broadly. And
Awesome. Well, this was a great way to learn more, not just about you and not just about OSSA, but the threads that kind of bring those things all together. I, again, like, as a friend and colleague over the years, I've really enjoyed and been grateful to be able to see it from my vantage point in my seat here in the West Coast. And I'm super excited and happy and proud of you, Camille. So
Thank you. Wow. Thanks.
thank you for letting me be able to hijack and hold you hostage for up to an hour to do this. I know for our audience, like even though we are a co-host to this thing and like we enjoy the interviewing process, like we have a really cool interview coming up in the queue with Dr. Jonathan On from University of Washington. And obviously like from our Glowgower interview and also Dr. Purnima Kumar. We love doing what we do here. And yet I won't speak for Camille, but when it comes to talking about ourselves, sometimes we're not the best at that. Who would have thought? So I really wanted to make sure as we go into the new year, being able to provide an opportunity to actually learn more about one half of us. And I'm sure one day in the future, the table will be flipped and you'll be stuck if you listen to that future episode about me talking about me for 45 minutes.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to that.
Oh gosh, that's gonna be a mess. I'll be properly caffeinated, but I'll have to make sure I get out any of my giggles.
Who here is not ever properly caffeinated? I don't think we do that.
I literally have my drip behind me in view on this interview the whole time.
I know. I appreciate it.
Well, on that note, Camille, as a host doing the wrong thing, is there anything else I should add or ask?
No, I think you got everything. I didn't go into all the clinicals that I could talk about, but we'll get there. I'll be in all of y'all's neighborhood pretty soon talking.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I thank you all for tuning in. I, again, really was looking forward to be able to do this episode and really diving into the origin story of not just Camille and her life and journey as a mouth nerd, but also to find the new things that are coming from it, such as OSSA and so much more. So thank you all. Again, I am Jonathan, one half of Let's Get Oral. This was Camille, and we will chat again with y'all soon.
Thank you.
Let's get oral.
Hey there, listener. If you made it this far, we want to genuinely thank you for listening to Let's Get Oral and giving us a chance. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite streaming platform, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else, and please share this widely with your friends, family, and coworkers. And if you haven't listened to our previous episodes, we highly recommend you check some of those in our catalog, such as the one we most recently published, Dr. Jonathan On, focus on the role aging and oral health play with each other. Until next time, keep smiling.
Yeah, that was fun.